Okay. I saw it. There we go.
There we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth, the Education Coordinator for Marlene's Market and Deli. Tonight's special guest that we have with us is Nikita Austin. She currently serves as the Director of Education and Innovation Specialist at Better Being Company. She has over 12 years experience in the natural products industry and has obtained her education in biochemistry and nutrition. Let's give a warm welcome to Nikita Austin.
Not everybody clap at once. Okay, could get a little loud in here, but thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, hello guys. I'm so excited to be on here. I've never done this type of platform before where we have like live people. Well, with real people, but never live in this platform. But I'm really excited. And as Elizabeth had mentioned to you guys, so my name is Nikita. And I work for Better Being, and Better Being is like a parent company, but we own a bunch of different brands like Solaray and Cal and LifeFlow and Heritage Store. So we have a bunch of different brands, but what I want you guys to get from this is to better understand magnesium, what it's good for, where it comes from, why we need it. And then I'll go through the forms at the end, and then you can kind of go, oh, I need glycinate, or I need, citrate. So we'll cover a lot of different things about magnesium, but we'll do the Q&A at the end. But if you guys want to ask questions in the middle or even pause me, I have no problem with that. Sometimes you think of that question in that moment and you want to get the answer. And there's a lot of other people that think the same question. So feel free to pause me. But yes, my background is in nutrition. So I am a big advocate for like food is our friend, right? About growing your own vegetables, about really eating nutrition from the source. But sometimes we don't eat enough, and supplements are there for a reason, right? And this is kind of how we'll incorporate both food and supplements and just understanding magnesium better. So let's see if I jump back. I have a legal disclaimer, so I always have to start off with that just so you don't sue me, okay? But the information in this webinar is for educational purposes and training only. So the products that I show you guys are not really intended to diagnose, mitigate, treat, or cure or prevent any diseases, damage, or dysfunction. Ideally, they're going to help you a lot. So we'll get to that point, but not to cure your diseases, so to speak. So what we have on the agenda today is, what is magnesium? That's the first thing. We got to know what we're even talking about. Then it's, what are the benefits of magnesium? Why do I even care what magnesium does, right? How is it going to benefit me? What foods contain magnesium? Because like I said, I always like to start right at the core, which is our food. So where do I even get that from? And am I getting enough magnesium? That is a big question. And I'll kind of explain if you're getting enough and some of the symptoms that you might feel that could lead to why you might not be getting enough. And then we'll talk and kind of conclude it with supplementing with magnesium, understanding how we can incorporate that in, and understanding, okay, there's so many forms of magnesium. Which one do I need? Where do I start? That's probably the biggest question. If you've ever stood in front of the magnesium set, it's not a row, it is a tire set for a reason. There's a lot of forms and a lot of ways to consume it. So we'll hopefully get you one that you feel might be best for you. So starting from the very beginning, right? What is magnesium? Magnesium is the 8th most common element in the Earth's crust and the 4th most abundant mineral in our body. Okay, so when we think of elements, the calcium, the magnesium, these are all crucial minerals that are vital for our body. In fact, magnesium has been a huge conversation even just over the past 5 years, because we're realizing how deficient we are and how critical it is for over 300 different enzymatic reactions in our body. So in other words, there's more than 300 different things going on that magnesium is important for, to activate those, to start them, to make sure that they're working properly. So it's way more than just on the surface. There's so much internally that we rely on magnesium for. And what are those main benefits? Like, what does it support, right? It can support our bones. We think a lot of magnesium and calcium for our bones. We think of the actual muscle tissues in our body. And sometimes we think of like leg cramps, right? And think of those muscle tissues, and we don't have magnesium or not enough of it, then we get a lot of that cramping. Cell membranes, right? This is more on a cellular level. There's a lot going on. Our DNA is affected by magnesium, our chromosomes. There's a lot of things that magnesium does, and these are some of the things it supports. But like I mentioned, I'll show you as well some of the main symptoms that people feel when they are deficient. So you might be able to see it from not just what does it benefit, but am I not getting enough of it as well? So that's really what magnesium is and some of the basics of what it supports. Then let's talk about food, right? This is where I said food is crucial, and every day you do want to eat healthy food, but what foods contain magnesium? So the first one is leafy greens. I feel like leafy greens contain every vitamin we need, and that's why we're always like, eat more greens, eat more greens. And it's hard. Even myself, who prides myself in nutrition and eating healthy, I don't eat enough in a day. When I do eat, it's not always just raw kale and spinach, okay? There's a lot of kombucha, but there's not enough kale in my diet. So we know that's a good source of magnesium. Then you have things like beans, black beans, kidney beans. Any of these beans are really, really good for a good source of magnesium. In fact, that's probably the quickest source that I usually get it in is beans, or even nuts and seeds, right? So a variety of those contain a lot of magnesium, and they contain a lot of other minerals too. Like when you think of pumpkin seeds, we often say, oh, that has a lot of zinc in it. So a lot of these crucial minerals are found in nuts and seeds. So keep a bowl of those around if you can. And then avocados. Love avocados. Can't go wrong with avocados. That's a great way to get magnesium. And then dietary supplements. So a lot of times I think what happens is we look at these foods and we go, yeah, I like these foods. These are common. But then it comes back to, well, are these foods really the way that they've always been? Are these foods really as nutrient dense as they used to be? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about deficiency, okay, in general. When it comes to magnesium alone, the numbers for deficiency are, I've seen it kind of vary year to year, but it's about 60 to 80% of Americans are deficient in magnesium. That is, everybody sitting in this room pretty much, right? That's a lot of people that are deficient in magnesium alone, okay? Some of the statistics I have here show you just overall deficiencies based on, not getting enough. So I have 90% of Americans do not get enough essential vitamins and minerals from food alone. And this is where I say that supplementation has its place to kind of help us fill the gaps that we're getting. We work with this doctor named Dr. Robert Hackman. He works for UC Davis, and we just had a clinical study with him on something different. And when we were talking to him, he's like, Nikita, you know that Americans are only getting 60% of their nutritional needs. He's like, that's like you going to school, taking an exam, and me giving you a D. Is that an acceptable number? And I'm like, well, when you look at 60%, you're like, it's okay. But when I think of getting a D on my chemistry exam, I wouldn't have passed. So that's not really going to work for me, right? So in that perspective, at the end of the day, think about all the foods you've eaten and then rate yourself. Do I get an A+ for this? Do I get a B, a C, or a D? And most of us are getting a D by the end of the day. That's pretty critical when you think about it in that aspect. And then the question is, okay, Nikita, I get it, we're deficient, but why are we deficient? Well, there's a lot of reasons why we are deficient. I could talk about that one alone for an hour, but the main reasons are the first one, which is SAD. I didn't make this acronym. I swear this was already out there. The standard American diet, right? We know that the foods we're eating are not that nutrient dense. A lot of times they're processed, right? So first and foremost, the foods we do consume might not be nutrient dense. The second thing is we're not getting. So there's a lack of quality, which I mentioned, but then there's this lack of quantity. And something I've actually really wanted to do, and one of these days I'll do it and I'll show you guys, is I wanted to take the chart that the NIH, the Nutritional Institute of Health, recommends of, okay, you need, this many milligrams of vitamin C a day, and you need this many of D and E and C. And if I take all of that and go, okay, that's going to take 3 apples, 2 oranges, this, and actually show you a table of here's all the food you would have to eat in order to meet your nutritional, just we're talking standard, right? Just like the recommended amount, not exceeding. You would have to eat 2 tables full of food that when you looked at, you're like, yeah, no, I don't buy that many fruits and vegetables just at the grocery store for the week. And so that's why when I say lack of quality, we understand, but lack of quantity is another big one. We don't actually eat enough of those foods as well. Then there's nutrient absorption. So there's, okay, I'm eating those foods like kale, but are they actually being digested in my body? are they actually being broken down properly? Because there's a lot of foods that have something called anti-nutrients. So those could be phytates and lignans, and basically think of them as part of the structure of the plant, but they kind of hinder the absorption of, you're not maximizing all the protein you could get out of that broccoli, or you might not be maximizing all of the DIM and all these other nutrients, because these anti-nutrients, which are normal and natural, but they block a lot of the absorption from foods alone, which FYI, to avoid some of those anti-nutrients, fermented food, there's a whole reason that we eat fermented food. Fermentation breaks down anti-nutrients. So that's a great thing to incorporate in your diet in general, is whether that's the kombucha that you drink or kimchi or just fermented pickles, you name it. Fermentation helps avoid anti-nutrients. So that's a big one. So nutrient absorption, right? Then there's food processing, kind of goes back to quality as well, right? But the food processing really takes out so many nutrients. So when you look at like cereal and you see these commercials and they're like, yeah, these cereals have your B vitamins. Well, they're fortifying it. So just like they do with bread. So they run it through a processing machine. They strip all the nutrients out because it's easier to work with. And maybe they bleach it to make the bread white, so forth. And then they add kind of like a vitamin, basically a vitamin, back into the food because they've already stripped it out. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm not saying fortification necessarily is bad, but they process so much that they have to fortify. They're taking out it right from the source and having to kind of create a vitamin back in. So a lot of food processing. And then not last or least, but soil loss and degradation. This is always my favorite conversation because my family originally is from Europe and we're from Hungary. If any Hungarians are on, let me know, then I can finally speak my native tongue. But my grandma's always like, oh, but Nikita, I just eat the apple and done. I'm like, okay, grandma, but like, it's not the 1950s anymore. It's not the same soil that it used to be. We didn't have Monsanto back then. We didn't have all these GMOs, and we didn't have just the life that we're living now that required, using so much land. Then a farmer will take the land, right? They'll spray it with pesticides and weeds. That soil is damaged. I'm not saying you can't rejuvenate that soil, but I'm saying we're ruining a lot of our soil. And where do our minerals come from? I told you where magnesium comes from, right? It's from the Earth's crust. That's really where we get a lot of these minerals. So our own farming system, not to blame any one farmer or anybody, but in that system that we live in, we are losing the main source of where we would get those vitamins even to begin with. So there are a lot of contributing factors. Oh, sorry, I don't know why it keeps doing that. There's a lot of contributing factors. So I mentioned the standard American diet, right? I told you that we don't necessarily even eat enough. Here's a big one. If you learn anything from me today on how food can affect magnesium, this is what I would tell you. It's letter B. There are foods that we eat that actually deplete our magnesium. So here I am going, okay, here's your magnesium level. I want you to eat food to get to this point. You're trying to eat some, but then there are certain foods that you're consuming that are actually bringing it back down. And those foods, we all do it, I do it, are coffee, tea, and alcohol are big, big, big ones. There's a couple things, but coffee, tea, and alcohol, you probably drink them all, maybe even all at once. I don't know. I won't look in your K-cup there. But the thing with that is that they're all diuretics. Okay. And what do diuretics do? They push water out of your body. So if you ever are bloated or your knees are swollen, like my grandma would get that a lot, she would try to take a diuretic to excrete that water out. Well, these are natural diuretics. And so when you're excreting urine out of your body, you're excreting that through your kidneys. Well, your kidneys are what store your magnesium. So, you drink coffee in the morning, and you're like, oh, I have to keep going pee, or I'm drinking tea and I keep having to go pee. Well, every time I go to the bathroom, I'm excreting out more urine than my body's intended to, which means I'm also excreting out more magnesium than I intended to. So again, it's hard to even get enough. And then something that we just consume naturally on a daily basis. And it's not to say that tea is bad for you or that coffee is bad for you, but it's just that they have properties within them that can actually take your magnesium out as well. So you now have to like double duplicate trying to get enough magnesium and if you don't drink any of those, then you're unique in your own and you're special, and good job. But most of us will drink a lot of these. And so we can lose them. A lot of nutrients. So there's kind of a net loss when you consume those. The other one is sugar. I mean, I think we know sugar in general is not necessarily the the best for us. But if you are consuming sugar daily, especially if you're having, coffee with sugars, now you're really pushing more magnesium out of your body. And then there are certain medications, but that really varies per person. That really varies per medication. And then we don't really have time to go into each one, but some medications can block nutrient absorption. They can pull nutrients out of your body. That's something you'd have to research with your doctor, or you could just even check online. Sometimes they show you like, hey, taking a birth control can deplete this, or taking an antidepressant can deplete this. So a lot of things, but the main one, like I said, was that coffee, tea, and alcohol, of just giving you guys, not to tell you to have to change that, but a reality check of, oh my gosh, we really are not getting as much as we think. And here are some reasons why. So food preparation, I kind of mentioned to you guys fermentation, right? Breaking down those anti-nutrients. We know that boiling vegetables can lose a lot of enzymes, can lose a lot of vitamins. So first and foremost, I want you to eat food. I want you to eat natural organic foods, but I also want to just be very honest and real and say, unfortunately, it's just not as nutrient dense as we'd like it to be. And even if it was, we'd still have to probably consume a lot more oranges than we would want to. Or that we even could handle based on acidity, based on a lot of things. So food is crucial. And soil's something that we can only control so much as, one-on-one. Obviously choose the foods you can eat, but I just wanted to give you another example of how our soil really isn't the same. Right here, I put at the top, there's been a nearly 40% decline in vitamin C, calcium, iron out of 43 different ones versus the 1950s. So this is really, oh, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
We have a really good question. Do all diuretics deplete vitamins?
Yeah, so in this particular instance, I'm referring to magnesium. Now, it's not to say that the other things can't be flushed out as well, but yes, so a diuretic in general, again, it's excreting urine, it's pushing water out of the body, right? So that in turn, yes, will take some of your nutrients out with it, more than it's just intended to do. So a diuretic would be whether you're taking that in a capsule, or in a pill form, or eating it or drinking it, I should say, it ultimately would do the same thing. So perfect. Yeah. And like I said, I'm so realistic to life. I drink tea every single day. Like, it's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, okay, if I'm doing that, let's see what what I do as well sometimes. I don't even have one on here, but when I have my water, oh, sorry, that a blurry background. I have these like liquid magnesium drops, and I'll try to add those in too. So I'm like, okay, just little ways that I can kind of increase my magnesium load, right? To make sure that I'm counteracting for the tea that I just have to have every morning when I wake up. So anyway, there's that. Yes. So here's just a couple numbers. Again, what you really need to take from this is just the soil's not the same as it used to be, right? And I can show you right there with a 40% decline in those main nutrients from 1950. That's drastic, right? That's a big difference from where it used to be. So that is that. So that kind of concludes what we covered so far is, what is magnesium, right? What are some of the basic benefits to it? Where do we get it from our food? Which we walked over that with the kale, with the beans, with the nuts. Then we talked about why our food might not actually be providing what we want to, right? So that's just kind of understanding that aspect. And then now we'll pivot into a little bit about deficiencies, right? I mentioned to you that, okay, I can tell you that it might benefit your heart, right? And it could benefit your bones, but how do you know on a daily basis if you might not be consuming enough? So there's a few things. If you know that you have low vitamin D levels, this is something you'd know typically because either A, you might be living in a place, well, you do live in Washington, don't you? So I was like, wait a minute, I live in Arizona, so this is a little bit of a different comparison, but you don't have as much sunshine as I do, right? So you're more prone in general to have lower levels of vitamin D. But you can actually just go get your blood work done, but you have to specifically ask for vitamin D. They can test that for you. And then from there, usually they'll say, okay, your levels are low or bearing low. So if you have low levels of vitamin D, it's often related or correlated with magnesium deficiency. If you're somebody who has restless legs, muscle tension, I actually get a decent amount of this as well. Usually in the evenings, sometimes when I'm sleeping, my legs are just bothersome. that could be magnesium deficiency. And I mentioned to you guys leg cramps, because that is a big one. And I do have a form of magnesium that I'll show you called magnesium chloride, as well as a product that I think could really help you for that. But that's also, magnesium deficiency. Sleep deprived, you're not sleeping well, you're not recovering well, could be magnesium. And then of course, some of these other things I mentioned, like you might have a poor diet, if you drink alcohol often or coffee often, an anti-acid user, maybe you're a smoker, if you have really severe PMS problems, or menopause, if you find yourself craving chocolate, that's a big one. Now, then I would say we're all deficient, but I did kind of say that we are all deficient. So they do go hand in hand, but magnesium is really, really prominent in chocolate. And so if you feel yourself going, okay, I'm like really craving chocolate. In fact, that's why they say a lot of women that are on their menstrual cycle and they're craving chocolates, they're depleting magnesium, right? I mean, they're losing a lot of iron, they're losing a lot of blood, they're losing a lot of magnesium. Excessive sweating, high stress. When we're stressed, our body uses magnesium, it uses B vitamins, it uses a lot in our body. So let alone do we need those for regular function, we're actually using those up. So a lot of different reasons why you may be magnesium deficient. Here are really those main ones that knowing that, even if you didn't know you needed magnesium, these could often be correlated to that. So let's talk a little bit about now getting into supplements. Okay. So when you see magnesium, you might hear the word chelation with the term magnesium. And as I mentioned as well, there's so many different forms of magnesium, like the glycinate, the citrate, the oxide. Well, the reason there's so many forms is because a process known as chelation. And so the reason I have a little crab at the bottom is because chelation means claw. Okay, that's really what it means. And so I want you to think about it this way. Think of magnesium, right, as your main mineral, your main supplement. And then there's a claw where it hooks on to something else, something that carries that magnesium through the body. So for example, when I say magnesium glycinate, what you're doing is you're taking magnesium, you're chelating it to glycine, which is an amino acid, right? They kind of come together and they really bind as one. And that's why you could have so many different forms of magnesium. And that's why one magnesium, like magnesium oxide, and again, I'll break these down for you guys, but magnesium oxide, you could get 500 milligrams in a capsule. Okay, that's because oxide it's really easy. It takes up a lot of space. It doesn't take up as much space as the other ones do. And so what I have there is I have magnesium and I have oxygen. I claw them together, but that particular carrier of oxygen is not taking up as much room as glycine, this amino acid, does. I don't want to overcomplicate it, but I want to say it this way. A lot of people go, Nikita, why can't I just get all my magnesium in one pill? And I'm like, you can on certain forms that don't take up as much room in that pill. But each form has a different benefit. And so you might take magnesium glycinate that does require 4 tablets, where mag oxide only requires 1, but you're getting totally different benefits. And so you kind of have to look at that as you're going through. So when you're buying magnesium, especially when you're buying them at Marlene's, because everything goes through the process and the testing and certification, but all of those magnesiums are chelated. So if you ever see chelated on the front, it just means that we've taken the magnesium, right, and we bound it to something else, and whatever we bind it to really gives it a different function and a different benefit. Okay, so that's what chelation is, right? It comes from the Greek word meaning claw. It's held in place by a larger molecule, for example, an amino acid. And just to take it a step backwards, if anybody's wondering what amino acids are, they are the building blocks to protein. So if I had protein as a structure and I took it all apart, all the little molecules that make up a protein are called amino acids. And there's a bunch of different ones. But glycine, for example, is an amino acid. And so that's one of the ones that we use to attach it. So form drives the function, right? Depending on which form we're looking at, it could really benefit you differently. Let's start with the one I was, talking a lot about here, magnesium glycinate. This has to be probably the best-selling form of magnesium that you'll find in a health food store. Okay. And I do have on here the two brands I mentioned. I do work for Better Being. So I am the director of education, but I'm also in the innovation department as well. So all the new innovation that we work for on the brand over the past 2 years and moving forward, hopefully forever, because I love my job. I get to work on these supplements. I actually get to create them. And so in this case, these are the ones that we've worked on and created. But again, ultimately I want you to feel educated, and you can make the best decision when you go in store. And there's a bunch of great people at Marlene's that can help you pick the best one for you. So we took magnesium, right? We bound it or chelated it to glycine, which is that amino acid. So you'll see chelated with glycine. Now, okay, a chelated with glycine, but what does glycine do? So glycine is really great because it is actually a very relaxing amino acid. People will take glycine if they're feeling maybe stress, if they're feeling like, oh, I can't sleep well, I need to relax my body. Another really cool thing that glycine does is it lowers your core body temperature. And the reason that is so vital is this. Somebody recently, 7 years ago, I don't know how recent that is, but either way, said to me, Nikita, do you know what the ideal temperature is to sleep on in your house? And I was like, ideal temperature. I don't know. I live in Arizona. If it's under 115, I think something's wrong with the world. So I'll let you think for a second. What do you think is the ideal temperature that the house, let's say your house, right? Your room should be at in order to sleep ideally? Just giving you a minute to think it through. So the answer is 68 degrees. Right? Now, again, for me, that's freezing, but that's why you get fuzzy blankets. Now, if you think about it, it's kind of like mummifying your body, right? But when you put yourself at a cool temperature like that, that is really the best state that your body can actually sleep at, can actually get into REM, right? Can stay calm. And so when I say to you, glycine lowers your core body temperature, that's vital for making you sleep better, for keeping you in a calm state of sleeping. So it's not to say that you take magnesium glycinate and you're just going to walk around and fall asleep. No. But what I am saying is that especially at night, this is a great one to take before bed because glycine is really relaxing. The other really cool thing about glycine is that it's highly absorbable in the body. So, excuse me. So if somebody goes to the doctors, you get your blood work or anything, and you go, yeah, I'm definitely deficient in magnesium, or my levels are low, or, I need something that's really going to give me a good dose of magnesium. Glycine is highly absorbable in the body, where there are other forms that are not as absorbable, but I'll explain their benefits as well. Glycine is very absorbable. So if you are low in in magnesium, this would be a fantastic form to take. Also, as I mentioned, really good for stress. If you find yourself stressed out a lot, you could take it even first thing in the morning. If you do have leg cramps, if you do have some of those symptoms, magnesium glycinate, again, I still go to this form every time. That's why I started with it. Has to be my favorite source of magnesium. However, I will say one thing, when I went back to explaining, okay, why can I get some magnesium in one pill and others take 4? When we attach it to glycine, glycine does take up a decent amount of room, right, in the overall chelation. So it will take you 3 veg caps, or 3 tablets or so in order to actually get enough, in order, to get a substantial amount of magnesium, it might take a few more pills, but I promise you it'll be worth it because those who take mag glycinate are diehards. They usually stick to it. So I wanted to spend the most time on magnesium glycinate, because like I said, it's a really, really good form, and a lot of people are dealing with the issues that magnesium glycinate can support. The second one is magnesium malate. Okay, malate is bound to malic acid. Okay, so there's different acids that we have, right? And malic acid is part of the Krebs cycle, okay, which basically helps with energy and ATP. So if you remember back in school, we talked about this ATP and this Krebs cycle. When we show this little cycle in the body, it's like, oh, this is a cellular energy. This is where the energy is formed in the body when it breaks down carbs and converts them into energies and everything kind of in that. A great reason to take magnesium malate is for a boost of energy. right? And it's not energy like caffeine. It's not something that's going to give you jitters or anything like that, but very good if you feel yourself with low energy, very good if you're an athlete, right? And you want to take your supplements and have good energy throughout the day. Just a really good form overall. One thing I do want to mention to you guys is that with the exception of oxide, which I held to the last one, all these magnesium forms that I mentioned are going to cover your basic magnesium functions. I mentioned magnesium supports over 300 different enzymatic reactions, right? So you're still going to get a lot of benefit from magnesium glycinate and magnesium malate. But again, we chelated it to something specific. That way it kind of goes a different route in the body. That way it supports something else and really kind of maximizes the benefit of magnesium, because magnesium can help with energy, can help with sleep, can help with all these things, but we want to guide it to really maximize that. And that's why chelating them with different things is important. So magnesium malate, again, this is your energy, supports energy, supports your mind, and supports your muscles kind of as well. As far as the images I have on here, we do have powdered forms, there are capsule forms. So in most of these things, there's a form, you know, whether that's a chewable, a capsule, a powder, liquids, there's a lot of different forms just based on what your preference is. But magnesium malate is a great option for supporting energy. And a lot of us are fatigued. So that's a big one we sell as well. Then you have magnesium taurate, okay? Magnesium taurate is chelated with the amino acid taurine, okay? So taurine is basically needed for the heart. And the way that I think of this one is taureau. I don't know, I always think of like a bull. And I'm like, okay, magnesium is like a bull, right? It's like this taurine is going to help your heart. It's going to drive you. It's going to make you really strong. Because I always think strong like bull, right? I don't know. It's just, I always try to think of something when I go through these, because there's so many forms and how do you remember it? But again, here's the amino acid taurine. It's needed to support your heart, and it's used by the body to transport magnesium in and out of the cell, and it is good for cardiovascular support. So, okay, sorry, give me 1 second there. Just checking the time. We're at 6:34 my time, 5:34 your time. Just making sure we're keeping the pace. In fact, I've got great pace, so we'll have a lot of time for Q&A, and we can open that up to magnesium and beyond. So write all your problems down. I'm ready to help you. Okay. This is your free doctor session. So magnesium taurate, right? Good for heart. And the reason this is also a big one is that heart problems are a huge concern that we have in the United States in general. A lot of people suffer with heart issues. We have heart diseases. We have strokes. There's a lot of things where people do need extra boost in heart support as well. So that is magnesium taurate. And then we have magnesium citrate, okay? This is the most commonly sold form, or maybe requested form, I would say. A lot of times if you go to the doctors, they'll say, yes, go take magnesium. And then they'll say, take magnesium citrate, okay? And I really think doctors are recommending magnesium glycinate more often, but citrate is definitely kind of your generalized magnesium supplement. This is the one I think of like when you're like, well, I don't have one specific issue necessarily. It's not that I need to support my heart more or that I can't sleep, but I want a good magnesium. I want it to cover all my bases. This is where I would go. So magnesium citrate is bound with citric acid, right? Citric acid, like when we think of oranges and other fruits, it supports general well-being, relaxation, right? I put along with healthy digestion and kidney function. And we also have one of them here. It's called the pretty magnesium. The reason this one is called pretty is actually because it has added collagen in it. So, and if you are vegan or vegetarian, then that wouldn't be an option for you, because at the moment, all collagen does come from animal sources, whether that's a bovine or marine and so forth. But collagen does really well in the body. Magnesium, you know, they both can help when it comes to joints. So even though we called it pretty, because we think about like, oh, magnesium can help the body, I think of it more for bone and joints. Okay, so really you're going to take magnesium, you're going to take collagen, and it's going to kind of help build up the bones in your body and kind of just help overall. So we have general well-being. Again, this is the great form to take if you're like, I don't know which one I need, but they also have them in combination like you do here with collagen. Okay, the next one you have is magnesium L-threonate. Okay, this one's really fun, and we only have a couple more that we need to go over. But magnesium L-threonate is fantastic for your mind. Okay. In fact, it's one of the only ones that, or the only one I would say, that crosses the blood-brain barrier. Okay. And so the way you think of that is basically that this form of magnesium crosses to a different place than the other ones do. It actually crosses more into the brain. It really supports your mind. So if you want added brain function, memory, clarity, right? Just overall sharpness, magnesium L-threonate is the form to take for that. So it supports brain function, it supports learning, it supports memory. Okay. I love this one. You'll see it says that it is not the chelated part, but the Magtine with the registered. That's just the company that supplies the specific form of magnesium. They've done the most research studies. They've done clinical studies on this. They're a really, really good company. And so we work with them to source that particular form of magnesium. And again, whether you're looking at the Cal one or you're looking at a totally different brand, that's not ours. This Magtine is really the main company that supplies this form of magnesium. So fantastic for thinking, fantastic for your brain. And then we have, I think I got two more for you guys. Yes, I do. Okay. So I've got magnesium orotate. I don't sell this form as often. They're all very important, but I'm so gung-ho on magnesium glycinate because that's really where most people kind of what they need, and even the magnesium citrate as well. But basically we have it here. It's chelated with orotic acid, excuse me. It's a good carrier for magnesium. It helps support cells and muscle function. It also helps supports cardiovascular. And this is kind of where I think it differentiates a little bit as well, is that glucose utilization during exercise. So glucose is our blood sugar, right? When we break down carbs, our carbs turn into glucose, right? Or blood sugar. And so a lot of times when people have issues with blood sugar or kind of in that diabetic realm as well, it's not utilizing glucose properly, or, and so forth. And so, yes, Elizabeth, go ahead.
Yes, we have a good question.
Yeah.
I believe Shelby was referring to the last magnesium that we were just talking about with the Magtine.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh
Sure.
yes, the
Can I go
yeah,
back? Oh, there I am.
perfect. Yes. Does it matter what time of the day this one is taken?
Okay. That's a good question. I mean, the only form of magnesium where I go, oh, if you're gonna pick any time of day, do it at night. It's really magnesium glycinate. And again, it's not because you couldn't take it in the morning. It's just that's where you can really utilize it the best. With the magnesium L-threonate, I kind of think of first thing in the morning is usually what I recommend, because you're going to start the day, you're going to start work, you're going to, whatever it is, whether you're working or not, you're out, your brain is functioning. So I think first thing in the morning is a really good time. However, I could give an example too. Tablets and pills in general, I always say give it at least an hour in the body to kind of really break down and start to go through the body. So let's say that you're somebody who's like, oh, I work during the day, but I have school at night, or vice versa, right? Something along those lines. It's not to say that you couldn't take it later in the day as well. And so if I used to do that, I used to work during the day and then go to school at night. And so I would, let's say my school class started at 6 p.m. I'd take it at like 4 p.m. Right? I'm like, okay, let me break this down. Let me get it flowing through my body and let me like kind of ride that coattail of when it's really working. So yeah, I think it could vary. I think first thing in the morning makes the most sense most often for people, but I don't think it has to be. I think you could take it midday as well. And it's not, again, like you take it and you're just like, it's not like an energy supplement that your brain just gets lit up. A lot of this stuff works from time being taken. Like you take it, right, and it starts to build in the brain. It crosses the blood-brain barrier, really supports brain function overall. But sorry, I maybe explained that a little bit longer than I needed to. But there's always different situations, so it's never black and white.
And just to,
is it one of
to
those things? Oh
no, go ahead, Shelby.
Is it one of those things? Okay. Yeah. Is it one of those things where, like, I mean, I guess since you're saying it's not obviously like caffeine, so you're not going to feel like a jolt of like, oh, all of a sudden I'm thinking perfectly clearly. But is it one of those things where like I would benefit or someone would benefit from taking it like say with the working in the day and the school at night, like taking it twice a day? Does it are the benefits kind of like staying in the body, or does it kind of pee out fast?
Okay, that's a great question. Yeah, especially when you're thinking of like, I need 24-hour brain support, right? Whether that's the morning and the night. Um, I would say I'd have to think this through a little bit. And I actually kind of makes me want to go back and look at the clinical studies they did to see if they took, I didn't read it that way, but to see if they took it at a certain time of day and how the results kind of varied. But I would say if you're taking it first thing in the morning, that should carry for you a good amount of time throughout the day. I couldn't say exactly when because there's no black and white answer to that. Everybody's body is so different on the way that it processes things through. I would say if you do know again that, you know, you whether that's school in the morning, right, and then work at day, I wouldn't say that there was an issue with taking it again, but I do want to state one thing is that so with the NIH, kind of what I mentioned in the beginning too, they're the ones who recommend how much you should consume of something. They'll say, okay, your recommended daily allowance, right, or your recommended daily intake should be this. For magnesium, the recommended daily allowance, and I'll explain the difference, is 420 milligrams a day. So they're saying we recommend for you, for your total allowance, to consume 420 milligrams of magnesium. They also state that your recommended daily intake of, okay, this is how much, even though we say you should have 420 milligrams a day, this is how much we recommend you consuming in one go, is 350. Okay, now let me just state that, just kind of bring that full circle. I'm not saying that if you had more than 420 milligrams in a day that you're just going to be, you know, having terrible side effects or anything bad. I would never hold you back from eating 15 cups of kale. You know what I mean? If you really wanted it. I'm just saying that what they say is that if you consume more than 350 in one go, what your body could do is just have some upset stomach. You could have some diarrhea, constipation, because it's just a little bit more than your body wants in one go to process through. And then if you do, you may have those side effects. So with that being said, if you take this serving size, no problem. And then you take that serving size even, you know, much later in the day, I don't see an issue with that either. I'm just telling you that the recommended amounts, which is kind of where I have to speak more legally, you know, in terms of is 420 milligrams as your recommended daily allowance. So
Okay.
I'd have to look on the back of this one just at the moment to see how much we put in it. But I would just say, you know, you want to stay within your realm of what's recommended. But again, I'm just being more a little bit legally correct than anything.
Is there like a loose powder? Like, would it be possibly more beneficial to like have, say, like you take one dose of loose powder and like mix it in a drink and sip on it throughout the day? Would that possibly
Oh,
be better, or would it be better to take a capsule?
yeah. So that's a good question. I mean, I'm not aware at the moment of any brand that has this particular form in a powder. There might be, I'm not sure, but at the moment I haven't seen this form in a powder.
Okay.
And that could vary for a few reasons. It could vary because one, this is out of all of them, I would say this is probably the most expensive form. Not that it's not affordable, but it's the most expensive one of the bunch. And so when you put things in a powder, you have to add things with the powder as well. Like you have to add, sometimes maybe it's a sweetener, even if it's natural, you might add a sweetener or some other powders that will take up more costs as well. And so for them to put it in a powder is going to make the product so expensive ultimately, unless they did a 5 to 15 servings, that you might not find it in powder form. So just wanted to state that to start with. The other thing is that when you consume, I would say like 90% at least of supplements in a powdered form, that's always the quickest way to get it into the body, right? I mean, you're liquidizing it, you're instantly kind of absorbing it and getting it in. So most of the time, a liquid vitamin is the quickest way to absorb anything, which could ultimately give you the best effect quickly. There are certain exceptions, like where probiotics, there are different benefits from a pill and not, and some other things, but I would say at that rate, instead of sipping it throughout the day, I'd much rather you get a good dose in a good momentum. So in this case, again, unless you have a powder form that I'm not aware of, you'd be taking it in pill form. I would then just tell you, take the full dose in pill form first thing in the morning. And then again, if you wanted to later in the day, that's up to your discretion, you know, just based on what I mentioned about the whole recommended daily allowance. I personally don't see that you would have an issue, but do keep in mind, if you do see some of those things like, oh, I'm starting to feel kind of constipated or getting a stomach ache, it might just be too much magnesium for your body to handle, at least in one day.
Okay.
So does that help?
Yeah, that does help. And then I have like a million questions, but I can always stop. But I just like, does this, because I know like, I don't know all the details, but does this form of magnesium, or like what kind of magnesium, like in a cup of kale, is magnesium chelated to something, or is it just kind of free form?
Yeah, no, it's so great question. So if you were eating kale, it is much more free form, right? It's not necessarily because you're not taking it and binding it to anything, so to speak. You're not, because that's a full process. This chelation is a full process that you have to do. You have to kind of do it molecularly. Then you lay out the magnesium. They go on these drying racks. I mean, it's a whole production to make magnesium. It's not easy by any means. Where kale is more of a elemental or free form of magnesium, right? Which is kind of the base that we start with before we chelate something. And again, it's a great source of it. But in fact, I have an image. It was one of the images in the front, and I have the number somewhere, but I'll find it. Or maybe Kathy, if you help me find it, I don't know. But it's how many cups of kale you would have to consume. We have an image of this. How many cups of kale you'd have to consume compared to a pill. We were at a trade show last year, and we actually bought kale and put it on this massive scale, and it was just like piling over. It was like a push of how much kale you eat to actually get the same amount as a pill, and so yes, keep eating your kale because there's still so many nutrients in it. It's just it's not going to be magnesium threonate, so that's not going to cross the blood-brain barrier.
I guess my question is kind of like, does this exist in does it exist in any type of food, or is there any food to eat to get this, or I guess
oh yeah, that's
kind of more
question.
just like
I'd have to look and see where with threonate exactly, or in this case, because I have threonate, and I put it's a metabolite of vitamin C, so it kind of comes in combination with that. But I wouldn't have a specific source that I would say, oh yeah, this is going to act like magnesium L-threonate, or it's going to give you enough to really to create that function the way that it would through chelation. So yeah. And then I have two more. I actually have three more forms, and that's it. And then I can totally open it up to all the questions, and we'll see, what everyone has. So I did the threonate. I kind of was leaving here on the orotate again. It just it's really good absorbing, so it's another great one to take as well. And I mentioned it can also help with glucose utilization, like really maximizing that sugar that you're consuming from your foods as well, and kind of turning that into energy, kind of turning that into utilizing it better for your body, whether that's for exercise or just daily function as well. So I have orotate. It's clearly not my favorite one, but they're all very, very good. And then I have oxide. Okay, this is the last pill form. And then the next one I'll show you guys is really where I conclude it. It's going to be a topical form. So that has its own realm of benefits. That's going to be really cool to show you guys as well. So magnesium oxide. Magnesium oxide is the starting base of magnesium that we use before we chelate anything. So when we make magnesium glycinate, we start with magnesium oxide, and then we take the glycine and we go through the chelation process. So here's the thing with magnesium oxide. This was the one where I said all the forms of magnesium except for oxide. So let me restate that. Magnesium oxide is the only form that works a lot differently than the other forms of magnesium. So I can fit a lot of magnesium oxide, right? Because I'm not necessarily adding this additional chelation of glycine or malic acid in there. So I can make a pill with a lot of what we call elemental magnesium. So I could put 500 milligrams of magnesium oxide into a pill. Again, glycine, these other ones are not taking up that space since that's the starting base. However, what this form of magnesium does is that it's extremely beneficial for those who are constipated, for those who do not have regular, bathroom breaks, who have a lot of issues, because this magnesium runs through the body. It pushes things through the body. So if you're like, oh, my doctor said I need magnesium because I'm deficient. I would not recommend you magnesium oxide for a deficiency. I would not recommend you magnesium oxide for things like, oh, I'm feeling stress, or I'm feeling leg cramps, or any of the above. However, it's a very, very crucial form. It's just for a totally different function, because it doesn't have that carrier to really drive it to something more specific. It's not really helping with the absorption. It's it's really beneficial for those who do have constipation and who are not regularly active, or not regularly going to the restroom. And I'll tell you what, I feel like over the past 3 years for me, as I train every week on something, one of the biggest questions I get from people at the end is, hey, I go once a week, or I go, but it's really hard for me, or I'm just not going enough. I'm like, I'm just been amazed at how many people are in this same boat. I'm not surprised, but I'm amazed. I'm not surprised because a lot of our foods, are creating those issues for us. Our lifestyles creating that. But there are a lot of people who don't realize that magnesium oxide is actually really beneficial for that as well. So that's why I say you can fit a lot more mag oxide into one pill than you can some of these other ones, because it doesn't require all this additional chelation with these other amino acids. However, you're not really absorbing this for the sake of not consuming enough magnesium. I'm not saying that it can't help you a little bit with some of those enzymatic functions that I mentioned, but I'm also saying, okay, figure out which one you need best, and then take that. This is really intended for you to go to the bathroom. Now, if your question might be, okay, Nikita, well, I'm going to go on a plane in an hour, but I need to go to the bathroom. What do I do? I'd be like, well, maybe I wouldn't take it right before the plane, because you don't know once it kind of breaks down. And I don't want you on the on the airplane having to run to the bathroom 100 times. But a great time to try this, or honestly, to try any magnesium if you're a first-time user, is give yourself a day off. Like if your Sunday is your day off or something like that, and you're like, I just want to test it to see how my body might react with it. Take your magnesium then when you're home, when you're in your comfort. And if you do have to go to the restroom, at least you're home, right? And that's not a bad thing either, but then you'll kind of see, oh, I took one pill. This is how my body works with it, how my body utilizes it. And that's kind of the safest way, I would say, to go about that one. But some of the other forms can kind of create regularity. Again, in some aspects, it might not be bad. It might just be a normal regularity. And then for some, it might be like, oh, I'm going a little more than I expected. And so that's why I just say, based on what you're feeling, definitely test out your magnesiums. And then the last form. No, what happened? There we go. The last form I want to share with you guys is the liquid form of magnesium. Okay, this is usually quite different. So one of the brands I work for is LifeFlow. And LifeFlow is a body care brand, typically topical supplements. And the form we use in this is magnesium chloride. Okay, let me just explain one quick difference for you. There are Epsom salts, which are magnesium sulfate, right? And then there are magnesium salts that are magnesium chloride. Okay, so you have sulfate, you have chloride. There's a pretty big price difference. Usually you can get a bag of Epsom salts for what, $6 or something, depending on the size. And the magnesium flakes might cost you $15 to $20. So people are like, oh, it's the same thing. Like, does it really matter? And I'm like, it's kind of not the same thing. So the same way I taught you all those different forms of magnesium and how they work differently in the body, sulfate and chloride also work differently in the body. Chloride, which is the form we have here in this instance, is more dermal absorbent than any other form, meaning it goes through the skin a lot better than sulfate would. When it goes through the skin better, right, whether you're spraying it on your body or I spray it in the bathtub all the time and then I'll soak in the bath, it's really getting through the skin better. It's getting into the bloodstream a lot better, and it's really relaxing you on a whole nother level. The Epsom salts feel great, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong. I'm just saying it's a different bang for your buck. You're really getting a different form of absorption when you are using chloride. Okay, so chloride, the whole LifeFlow collection of magnesium, because there's a spray, a gel, the flakes, the lotion, it's all using that. Yet the lotion as well, we have that. And it comes from the Zestian seabeds. So they basically go into the ocean and then they go to the bottom of the ocean and they go into the beds and they kind of drill down and they pull out this extremely pure form of magnesium chloride. So, you know, when you go into the ocean and you come out and you're feeling a little salty, maybe even a little itchy or dry in some ways, that's usually the salt, that's the magnesium, right? That's kind of building up that film that you have on your skin. So magnesium is very, very abundant in the ocean floors. And this is where that particular form of magnesium chloride is coming from. The Zestian seabeds is where they get it. Now, I mentioned to you guys, there's spray, there's lotion, there's flakes, right? And I kind of have a picture for you here. So, and this is where I'll conclude it before we open for Q&A. The question is often, well, Nikita, which one do I need? Which one's the best? Where do I start? So I tell people, if you are dealing with something like leg cramps, okay, something that's really severe on-site issues, I always say go for the spray. Okay, and the reason is the spray is literally just magnesium chloride. There is nothing else in it. Where if I compare the lotion, you'll have like shea butters and other ingredients that are good, but they're going to have a difference between them. So if you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really prone to leg cramps, or maybe you're a runner or a cyclist and you want to avoid that, or a bodybuilder, that's a big one. Bodybuilders, you know, when they get on stage and they're like, and they're like trying not to cramp so bad. This is something that you can spray directly on the area, whether that's your calf, whether that's under your foot, if maybe you're just sore. What I would recommend you do is in the very beginning, take your wrist, spray your wrist, just once or twice, kind of just like pat it, let it air dry. What will happen is the magnesium will go through the skin, but anything that's left over, any of that salt or that film, well, you'll just see it on the top of your skin, almost like a little white flake. You can dust it off. You can coat it over with lotion if you just want to kind of like lock it in more. But I don't suggest just spraying it all over your body. This is from experience, from my first time in the first year when I worked for this company 8 years ago, is I was doing mixed martial arts and I was sore everywhere. And I just came home and did this perfume spray all over my body. And the next thing I knew, I was like, oh, I am burning. I was like itching so bad. And I had to jump in the shower and I was just like waiting for it to come off. And I was like, something's wrong with me. I don't know what's going on. And then I'm like, oh, it's a super concentrated form of magnesium. I can't just spray it all over my body like it's nothing. I really need to like test it out first. And so what I tell people, spray your wrist somewhere that's really easy to wash off. If for some reason you feel a reaction there, then that's okay. It's nothing bad. It's just really strong. Maybe then if that is too strong for you, even here, we go to the lotion, right? Where it's kind of filtered through with these things. But what I would say is if you do have leg cramps, I keep going back to that one because it's really the biggest thing that I get or request. Spray your calf just once, twice, kind of tap it, you know, let it dry for a second, take some coconut oil or lotion and just coat it over and just hydrate the area. You should be totally fine. But different parts of the skin have different thickness. They're just not going to be black and white. And so you might feel like under my feet, I don't feel anything. But when I sprayed my lower back, it really itched for me. So learn your body, kind of feel it through. The oil, again, is the most pure form. If you're really in need for magnesium and you want it on an area for soreness, pain, cramping, go with that one. If you want something that's, again, not as harsh as far as how tense it is, go to the lotion. The lotion's great. It smells great. Excuse me, that one's unscented. We had a scented one too. I don't know if we still do. I have to check now. But the scented one that we had was like this vanilla. It was really, really nice as well. And again, you could say, even maybe you have kids or something and your kids are like, Mom, I'm feeling stressed, or, you know, anything like that. You could just rub it on the chest, right? You can kind of calm the body, rub it on someone's back. You know, I used to have growing pains because I was a gymnast growing up and I swear I lived in growing pains. You can rub it on your muscles. This is also great for post-workout. This is great for just, you know, gardening all day and your knees are hurting. So you do have those options. You have the oil, you have the spray. Oh yeah, you do have, sorry, two flavors. Don't eat them. two scents there. And then you have the flakes. And all these are here are just different sizes. So you have the one on the right side is just a smaller pack. And the one on the left side is the more like that gallon jug. These are the flakes I'm telling you about. This is what you're comparing to Epsom salts, right? You can take a scoop of that, dump it right into the bath, let that kind of just, you know, dissolve through. One thing I do want to say, and you guys will figure this out with me quickly. There's nothing too personal for me. So anything you guys have to say, go for it. But if you yourself, or maybe you have a daughter or family member who has really bad cramps, really bad PMS, okay, magnesium is crucial. It's crucial for cramping. What I would really recommend is if they're comfortable laying in the bath, put these magnesium flakes in the bath, okay, because they can absorb it through their uterus as well. And that will really help with uterus is what cramps a lot, right? So you can really help with those cramps, really absorb it well into the body, and also help take the pain off of their back, pain off of their stomach, and everything going on. This is like if you've got a girl and she's going through this, buy her a thing of chocolate and a magnesium flake. This is like that kind of combination that I really recommend. But again, this could just be at the end of the day, you want to take a bath, add them in there. Maybe you don't have the flakes at home, but you have the spray, as I mentioned, just spray the bathtub. You can pour it right in there. You can spray it however you want to do it. And we do have a night version, I believe, of this magnesium oil spray as well. I'd have to check, but if you do carry it, it basically just has added lavender. So it's just
Yeah,
a little.
They don't carry that one.
Oh, okay. No problem. No worries. It's just added lavender. You could even do that yourself, buy an essential oil and kind of mix it up. But these are the topical versions. There's gel and there's even been bar soap. There's been all sorts of things. But one other thing I just want to leave you with is that what's nice about the topical ones of magnesium is those who take it internally and tell me, Nikita, it doesn't matter if it's glycinate or oxide, but my body still reacts really heavily to magnesium. How else can I get this through my body? You have a topical option. Of course, the internal one is going to work a lot differently and might give you more magnesium, but this is still a transdermal way. This is still a way to get it into the bloodstream, to be able to get it into the body. And so if you really do want to avoid the whole process where internally it works, again, I still think that the capsules or powders are going to give you more. This is just a nice addition to make sure that you're getting some magnesium into the body. So I will leave you, if I can, with that. Any questions? And I hit the hour. I thought I was going to make it in 30 minutes, but I was having too much fun.
So Nikita, there were a couple of questions.
Okay. Oh, I think I
Let's
see it.
see. Victoria asked, for someone who gets headaches often, should I take this magnesium regularly or only when I have headaches or migraines? And I think that might have come up with the oxide one. I think that's where you mentioned headaches.
It did, but actually I would recommend something else. And let me tell you, I have such bad migraines that I have what I call a migraine kit. Okay. Like I am that bad. And I have all sorts of essential oils like peppermint. And I have this really cool little thing that I had found online called this Acu Relief. And I put it right here on my hand. Because if you're familiar with your hand, there's this pressure point here that you're supposed to press, and that can really help with migraines. So I tell you, like, they're so bad. I even got Tylenol packets in here just for backup. Okay. So you're talking to the right person when it comes to migraines. I would recommend for you the magnesium glycinate, because a lot of times, even though I did have, Kathy, you're correct, I did have it on the oxide as well. It's actually the first one that comes to my mind because we have such tension a lot of times with the headaches. And not only do we get this tension here, but we get it all the way through our necks, right? When we press here, it also feels so good. We get a lot of tension. Glycinate will really help relax that. Now, as far as how often to take it.
Can we do some yoga now?
What? My watch just asked me to do yoga. If you guys heard that, I'm in a meeting, Siri. I can't do yoga right now, but she's like, yo, she probably heard me say I have a headache, and she's probably like, go do yoga. That will help you. Okay, so that's funny. These things listen to us. So if it were up to me, I would tell you, yes, take magnesium every single day. Okay. Now, this could be whether you're prone to migraines or not, because again, it's vital for our body. But when you are prone to something like headaches or migraines, you do want to take that every day, because you can take it when you have one. But again, we want to try to prevent that, right? We want to try to be on top of it as much as we can. If you're taking that constantly, I guarantee you will feel a huge difference overall. I would hope, at least for your health, and the frequency that you would probably get them, or the severity of them as well. So take them every day if you can. That would be ideal.
And then Julie asks, will the spray leave you feeling sticky?
Great question. Yes. I would say it does. It does leave a little bit of that film. Like I said, kind of like when you get out of the ocean, right? And you're like, oh, I'm kind of dusty, kind of salty. It can have a bit of a stick. So usually like if I'm, spraying it and I pat it down, I might go wash my hands after. Or like I said, if you have lotion, then you can just, if you wanted to, because it is kind of drying, you can just coat it over your skin and then I'll just take the lotion and I'm good. But it definitely has a bit of a film, which is a good thing in the case that it's real, so it's actually working. It's in that product.
And I find for people who have sensitive skin, the lotion is a better way to go, or you could take the oil and of the spray, and then you could potentially dilute it with some aloe or something else if you wanted to.
Oh, we actually had one once. I don't know if we still do, but
I
had
don't know
one.
that we're making the aloe one anymore.
Okay. Sometimes it's hard to emulsify it together, like it doesn't blend as well. But if you do have the aloe, like Kathy said, I mean, that's even better than lotion sometimes, right? Especially if it feels kind of hot or itchy.
And Natalie asked that she started late and she missed the first one or two and wondered, she's on osteoporosis medication, and is citrate the best option? She has currently a fracture healing.
Okay, so you did miss the first couple slides, because one of them I said that I have a legal disclaimer where I cannot cure, treat, mitigate any diseases. And I've probably already broken a few of those rules, just because at the end of the day, fire me. As long as I'm helping people, I'm happy, right? I want you guys to have the best education possible. If you are on osteo, medications, then I have to right there legally state that you would have to discuss that conversation with your doctor. Okay. But if I take a different approach and say, okay, you want to work on bone health, joint health, really strengthening that. There are a couple different forms of magnesium that could be for that. I think magnesium overall, one of its main benefits is bone health. Right. In this case, if you caught the end of it, I wouldn't necessarily suggest oxide for that. Citrate is a great option. Citrate is kind of your overall magnesium supplement. So it helps with, if you had a little constipation, it helps that. It helps your heart, it helps your bones. So I would just say if you're wanting to support bone health overall, I would lean more maybe with the magnesium citrate for that. Otherwise, I'm so sorry. I wish I could be more kind of out there, but I have to recommend that you chat with your doctor first.
And also,
Okay.
The other piece to that, Natalie, is that when you're looking at the fracture healing or even bone density, bone issues, there's more than just magnesium. So there's other pieces there, like you can go into Marlene's and they have they might have collagen bone complete, which
I was
is
thinking of that
formula.
one.
Yeah, and so finding something that has, because you get the raw materials, but some things like vitamin D helps, vitamin K helps, and so there's all different pieces. So I think it's a more complicated question than just magnesium as an answer.
This is
Okay.
It's that dang background I have. Well, anyway, this was the one Kathy was referring to. It's this like purple box.
I don't know if
Oh,
they have the
okay.
new box yet, though.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. It's if it's the old one, then it's just the same thing, but just like a new
There you
packaging.
go. Now we can see.
Okay. Well, I'll go into Marlene's then and see what I can find.
While we're answering other questions, I'm going to just pop onto their website and make sure they have that one too.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you.
sure. What's great about that one too is that it covers the magnesium, it covers the it has added collagen, it has the calcium, it has vitamin D, it has vitamin K2. And just because I'll throw it out there right now, the way that I always train on K2 is I call it the bus driver. Okay. And the reason is that this is how I explain it. I say vitamin K2 is the bus driver. It's driving the bus. And in the back of the bus, you have magnesium, you have calcium, you have vitamin D, and you have all these crucial nutrients. And what K does is says, okay, kids, I'm going to drop you off at your home. right? We don't want things like calcium to end up too much in the bloodstream or too much in places of the body that it shouldn't be. And we don't want kids to be at the wrong house, right? So this bus driver is dropping calcium where it needs to be, dropping off vitamin D where it needs to be, dropping off magnesium so that it's best utilized in the body. And so that one's really nice as well, because vitamin K is K2 in particular is really beneficial to support joint health and bone health, again, by maximizing as well those vitamins like the calcium and the magnesium to make sure that they get where they need to be. So you'll see that in that formula, and it's a nice combination to have for that reason.
Oh, that's great information. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also want to add that the Cal and solar ray products that were mentioned this in this lovely presentation at both store locations are on sale 35% off till the end of the month. So
Oh,
Good.
yeah. Is
Actually,
that why
they're
you brought me on?
they're
Okay.
35% off through March.
Oh, even through March. See, there you go, folks.
Yep.
Okay,
Nice.
cool. I didn't even know. So yeah, and those are some of this is LifeFlow that I showed you guys because LifeFlow has the topical ones. But that's Cal, right? And then let me find that one that has solar rays, well, just in case you wanted a visual, but there's an example of like a solar ray bottle as well. And as I stated in the beginning too, but basically I work for, it's called Better Being Co. And so we own a bunch of our brands, and I work on the innovation department and in education. They go hand in hand, of course. And so everything that falls under that family of brands, I mean, I'm as strict as they get when it comes to testing, when it comes to looking for GMOs, when it comes to just making sure that potency and purity are there. That's what we do all day long in the labs. And so I'm very confident with testing, if anything, when it comes to these products. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Yes, there is another one here in the chat. Is there
Okay.
a specific magnesium that might be good for mood regulations and balance?
Yes, I would go back to glycinate. Okay, so again, the glycine, which is that amino acid, is what's really good for relaxing the body. So if you're having anxiety, right, and these types of things where your heart is palpitating and maybe you feel your mood off or you're feeling irritable, glycinate is a really good option for that. So that is definitely the form I would recommend. And let's say that you're saying, I kind of mentioned kids in the beginning, right? Or towards the end, because it's hard sometimes for kids to take these pills. So if you didn't find it in a powdered option, then again, at minimum, I know it's not glycinate, but the lotion, that chloride, is also really well to kind of go through the skin. And so I always think of things, like I said, kind of massaging some on the chest, massaging some on the back, any of the areas that they might feel stress, and adults as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, adults 100%, but I'm also just trying to throw in another aspect for children as well.
And they're out of stock right now, but there is a magnesium gummy from Cal.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's a possibility. When I'm not sure when it's coming back in, so I apologize for that, but keep an eye out for it. And just to get back to the collagen bone complete, I don't know if it's in stock right now at your store, but you carry it at both locations. So
Oh, good to know.
Yes.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you so much, Kathy. Oh, and we have Janet. Janet, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Ask your question.
Let's see.
Unmute.
You are still muted, Janet, just in case. Oh, you're unmuted.
I have some pure magnesium oil that I had bought.
Uh-huh.
The bottom of the bottle says 6/20/22. Does that mean it's expired? Can it still be, or what is that on the very bottom?
Yes, so it would be considered expired, which
Is it bad to use, like in spray the bathtub, or?
well, I laugh only because that's when I have to hide my own like anxiety as well. I laugh. And when I say that, what I mean is technically we cannot recommend you to use anything that's expired. But
Okay.
you're talking to a homegrown Hungarian who probably eats, food off the floor if we had to and whatnot. So, I would say up to your own discretion, especially if you're using it in the bathtub.
Okay.
But legally I have to say no.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jan.
Which we can, if Elizabeth, if you can cut this part off and you don't have to post this part on the YouTube, then I can be a little bit more free on what I say. So it's up to you.
Oh yeah, definitely. We
like
could
that.
actually stop the we're gonna say goodbye to our Facebook live friends and stop the recording. We thank you for watching and tuning in.
Oh yeah, absolutely.